Today we are talking all about legato and non-legato and how the pianoforte method very wonderfully and gently progresses students through these two techniques. So we will of course always begin our young piano students in level 1 with a non-legato technique. Now it's important to remember at this early stage that the student, especially if they're quite young, are getting to grips with how to press on the keys. And they're not going to have ideal technique. They're not going to have beautiful hand shape. They're just beginning to interact with the physical movement of making sound on the keyboard. And this is a really wonderful time to introduce non-legato. So non-legato is literally the detached sound from one note to the others. So for example, so you have that break in sound in between them. But even more specifically is the quality of the sound of each note as it's played. So it's not a thin sound. It is the feeling of going all the way to the bottom. My teacher when I was young used to say, push to the bottom of the key bed, and then the release of that. So pressing down and then releasing. So not staccato. Staccato is, this quicker sound, short sound, totally different than non-legato. Non-legato is a rich, round sound that is detached from its neighbors. And what's happening when the student does that is they are allowing the piano hammer to strike the string in a way that allows all the overtones to sound. So they're engaging with this wide range of overtones and sound quality and color. This is very important for oral development in the beginning as they're getting to know the piano. Even on a digital piano, they have to imitate this motion of bringing sound out of the piano by pressing down, sticky press down, and then let go. And in the beginning of the pianoforte method, so level 1, when they're playing these early songs, it's easy to do that back and forth between the hands, the non-legato. So I always encourage, them to keep their hand open and to let go of the sound. And very gently, they start to create this lovely shape, almost just as a way of grabbing the sound, because it's so much easier to create that sound when you have this traditional hand shape. Now, another little tip actually for helping support hand shape that I've been using recently is I'll ask the student to hold their hand like this and take their other hand into a gentle fist, gently place in their other hand and just give a little snuggle. I say just give your hand a little snuggle. There we are, and then we have this natural hand shape. It's just a little technique I've been using, so we can do that right at the piano because the hands are a nice size for each other. So we're this non-legato sound. Now, all through level 1, I'm non-legato. All through level 2, I'm non-legato with the students because it is actually a tricky technique to get a hold of because as they use the other fingers, they have to adjust alignment. So nothing with this notion that fingers are less strong than others. It's simply developing the correct alignment to get that sound. Because ultimately, we want them to be able to play any note with any finger and create the right tone color, the tone color they want or that's appropriate, so that you can play a scale passage and not know which finger's playing which key. Of course, obviously we want to know that. So all through level 1 and all through level 2, we're developing non-legato and trying to create this wonderful fingertip motion with an open hand. Now, I'm going to just show you the fingertip for a second, see if I can move. The fingertip is almost a straight line from fingertip to this joint as we're sinking down into the key bed. And there's no tension anywhere else. So this is what we're working towards in the non-legato stage. It's so important, and it's actually quite challenging to create this sound because you have to engage their ear and you have to manipulate the alignment, and they're growing and they're young. It can take a while. It can take a year or 2 for them to get through these first 2 levels. Now, when they get to level 3 of the book, they've been playing for a while, or if they're a little bit older, the skills have been developing quicker. But they've been at the piano for a while and they're creating some nice non-legato sounds. And it's about midway through this book that I start them on actual scales. And that is when we have the non-legato scales. All my students play non-legato scales for ages, non-legato scales. And I'll interrupt them if they start to slur the notes together. I'll say, ooh, please, let's have this detached sound. And this is what they do, and it develops their technique so beautifully. But what do we do when we get to the legato phase? Because obviously we need to play in a connected way at some point. So this book is so wonderfully designed because it doesn't have legato in, but the music is written so that you can add it in when the student is ready. And I'm going to switch this around so you can see some of these pieces and how I add them in. But before I do that, I want to show you the little preparatory exercise I do with students before we begin this sort of legato training. So I close the piano, the fall board, and we sit side by side and we just put our hands here. And I say, okay, so when we're singing in music, we have to breathe. And so breathing is like this, obviously. And when we're playing music, we have to breathe with our hands in a similar way. And so breathing with hands is just simply this. That's it. Breathe with hands. So that's it. And then tap the tips. So we are engaging with the feeling of being on the tips. And now we breathe with our hands, with our fingers on our tips. So it's not this, it's not this. And the fingers stay close. They just hang, and we're breathing with our wrists. Because when we breathe on the piano, we want to do that in a letting go of the sound, which is non-legato, basically. But now we're going to do that same motion with more than one note. So, for example, I'm going to flip this around so you can see, but this song is called Sweet Stand. And it's so wonderful for this because breathe. And then it moves. So it has the non-legato motion, but added with these little slurs, creating a legato sound. Always relying heavily and foremost on the way the notes sound and the way the piano sounds and the way it's all sounding together, because of course sound is the most important. So I'll swap around, I'll show you a few of these pieces, and that is legato versus non-legato. See you in a minute. So this is PianoForte Level 3, and one of the first little songs in this book that's so wonderful for introducing legato is this song called Morning Birds. So I would do the exercise where we are breathing with our wrists, and then I will say to them that the symbol that we use in music to indicate that we want to breathe is this. And then I would demonstrate it. So here we go. Etc. Now this song is lovely because then it moves up a step, so we can have another one. So here we are. And so on. And if you're not ready for that yet on this piece, there's several in a row here that are similar. Now this one's good because it is a rotation back and forth with the hands. So we have this instead. Lift. Sorry, I know this is an awkward way to view this. And then of course this one is the same. We can introduce that, and it has a lift as well. So then we have this wonderful swapping of fingers. And this whole middle section of the book is so wonderful for introducing non-legato. That's PianoForte Level 3. So that was PianoForte Level 3 and introducing legato in this level. So I kind of do it after they've started scales, and we really have just really grounded the non-legato technique, which means that they've really grounded themselves in aligning the arm and hand to accommodate all the fingers, not just the third and not the second, but the whole hand. And it's slowly developing this wonderful shape that we need to draw out the sound. So this is, if you're in the US or if you're in the UK, this is a printed book like this. But if you're anywhere in the world, you can also access this in the printable membership. So I invite you to try it out with your students, and I'd love to hear what you think. See you next time.